The shadow on the wall behind me lifted its hand half a second before I did. I watched it happen on the screen recording afterward, over and over, and I still can't explain the delay, or why, by the third time it moved on its own, it wasn't shaped like me anymore. I need to back up, because none of that makes sense without the rest of it. I work in data infrastructure for a company that never turned its cameras off, not once in 3 years of remote work. Cameras on was policy, unofficial but absolute, the kind of thing nobody writes down and everybody obeys. Tuesday night, 11:40 p.m., I was on a call with our Singapore office, the kind of call where everyone is tired and video is technically optional but nobody wants to be the first to go dark. My apartment was empty. It's always empty at that hour. My roommate travels for work most of the month, and behind my desk chair the webcam picks up a slice of hallway, dim, unremarkable, the kind of background you stop noticing after the first week of working from home. About 10 minutes into the call, the noise cancellation started acting strange. We use one of those AI tools that scrubs out keyboard clatter and barking dogs and traffic, so all anyone hears is your voice, dry and close, like you're in a booth. Our project lead, Marcus, stopped mid-sentence and asked if someone had a dog in my apartment. Nobody did. He said it sounded like breathing, close to a mic, and he was looking at me specifically because my ambient audio track was the one spiking on his screen. I checked my settings. Nothing unusual showed up on my end. I told him it was probably my HVAC kicking on. We kept going. I want to be honest that at the time I didn't think much of it, because calls like this always have some glitch. Somebody's cat walks across a keyboard, somebody's connection stutters and drops a syllable. I minimized the audio panel and got back to my sprint update. 15 or 20 minutes later, Priya, our QA lead, typed something in the chat instead of saying it out loud.
It just said, "Is someone in your house?"
I read it and felt a small, stupid flicker of embarrassment, because obviously not, and I typed back LOL no just my furnace and kept talking through my update. She followed up anyway.
No, I mean right now. Behind you.
And she sent a screenshot. I didn't look at it right away. I finished my point about a database migration, watching Marcus nod along on his tile, and only after I stopped talking did I open the image in a new tab. It was a frame from my own video feed, timestamped about 90 seconds earlier. In the corner, in the hallway shadow, there was a second shadow overlapping mine.
Not a shape I recognized, longer than me, the arms hanging a little too far down, like sleeves with nothing solid inside them.
I told her it was probably a compression artifact, the kind of thing low bandwidth does to dark corners of a frame. She didn't respond to that, and I noticed nobody else on the call said anything about it either, which somehow felt worse than if they had. That's when the noise cancellation failed for real the first time, not a stutter but a full failure, the app throwing up a small red banner that read background audio could not be filtered. In the 2 or 3 seconds before I found my mute button, everyone on the call heard it raw. Not breathing this time.
Footsteps.
Slow, even, coming from the direction of my kitchen, off to the left, a room I could not see without turning my whole chair around. Marcus asked if I wanted to take 5. I said I was fine. I've thought a lot about why I said that, because it sounds insane in hindsight. It was almost midnight, I was tired, and some old, stupid, prideful part of my brain did not want to be the guy who panicked on a work call over a floorboard creak. So I kept talking. I gave my update. I made a joke about the deployment timeline landing on a Friday, which nobody laughed at. I did not turn around. The noise cancellation failed twice more over the next 10 minutes.
Both times, footsteps.
The second time, closer, close enough that Priya's little chat message this time just said a single question mark, which somehow felt like the most honest reaction anyone had had all night. The AI kept flagging the sound in its debug log as unclassified biological, a phrase I had never seen the software produce before and have never seen since. I went looking for it in the documentation afterward, on a laptop in a coffee shop with too many people around me, and it does not exist as a category. It should have said human, or animal, or nothing at all if it couldn't identify the source. Unclassified biological showed up 3 separate times that night, each entry a few seconds long, each one timed exactly to the footsteps. I finally looked at the shadow again around the 40-minute mark, not on a screenshot this time but live, in my own camera preview, the little box in the corner of the call window that shows what everyone else is seeing of me. My chair. My shoulders. My desk lamp throwing my shadow long and thin across the hallway wall behind me. And overlapping it, not moving when I moved, was the second shape.
It had been there the whole time, I think.
I had just never looked at the corner of my own feed closely enough to notice it wasn't tracking with me at all. I sat very still and watched it in that little preview box. My shadow stayed where I put it, hunched slightly forward toward my keyboard the way it always is at midnight.
The other one lifted an arm. I had not moved my arm.
Marcus was mid-sentence, something about deployment windows, and I remember his voice going very far away, the way sound does when your ears keep working but your brain stops processing language. Priya typed something else in the chat. I didn't read it until later.
It said your shadow just did something. We all saw it.
I turned around in my chair.
There was nothing behind me.
Empty hallway, closed bathroom door, the coat rack I keep meaning to get rid of. Nothing that could cast what I just watched move on its own. I turned back to the screen, my heart going hard enough that I could feel it behind my jaw, and the preview box showed my shadow again, alone, exactly where it should be, like it had never left. I told the team I had to go, made some excuse about a delivery at the door at midnight that nobody was polite enough to question, and ended the call before anyone could say goodbye properly. I sat at my desk a long time afterward with every light in the apartment on, telling myself the obvious things. Bad compression. A trick of the desk lamp against a warped wall. Sleep deprivation doing what sleep deprivation does to a brain that's been staring at its own image for 2 straight hours. The recording tells a different story, and I've watched it more times than I want to admit, alone, late, with the sound down low so the footsteps don't carry into the rest of the apartment. There's a stretch right around the 51-minute mark where the second shadow steps fully clear of mine.
For about a second and a half it stands alone against the hallway wall, no longer overlapping my outline at all, and it is not shaped like a person hunched over a keyboard. The shoulders sit wrong, too square and too high.
The head sits too low on the neck, or the neck is too long. I still haven't decided which, and some nights I think not deciding is the only thing keeping me sane about it. Then it steps back into place behind me, folding back into my own outline like it was only ever borrowing the shape, and the noise cancellation log shows one final unclassified biological entry, for seconds long, and then nothing, like whatever it was had simply sat back down to wait. I moved apartments 6 weeks later. I told my landlord it was for a shorter commute, which wasn't a lie so much as it was the smaller truth I could say out loud without sounding unwell. I still work remote. I still take calls late sometimes, because the job doesn't care what time zone is inconvenient for me, and I have gotten very good, without ever telling anyone why, at angling my camera so that nothing behind me can cast a shadow at all. Just a blank wall, close enough that my desk lamp barely reaches it, nowhere for anything to stand. Marcus asked me once, months later, half joking on a call with new hires listening in, whatever happened with the haunted webcam thing. I told him it was a driver issue, that I'd updated my noise cancellation software and it never happened again. That part isn't true. I never updated anything. I just stopped looking at the corner of my own feed. Some nights, when a call runs late and the apartment goes quiet enough around me, I still hear the software flag something in the background, a soft 2-second clip, unclassified, right on schedule like it's checking that I'm still here. I have trained myself not to check what direction it's coming from, and not to look down at the floor near my chair to see whether my own shadow is sitting exactly where it should be. I don't know if that's caution or cowardice. Some nights I don't think I want to find out which. A 13th tile joined our brainstorm with no name and no camera icon, just a black rectangle, and on it we watched the tall figure standing directly behind our coworker Devin while he sat alone in his locked apartment 40 floors up, completely unaware anyone, or anything, was behind him. I need to explain how we got there, because the call started as the most boring meeting on my calendar that week. I work in brand strategy at a mid-size agency, the kind of place that still calls things brainstorms even though we all know we mean a video call where 12 people stare at a whiteboard app and 3 of them talk. It was a Thursday afternoon, a new client kickoff, 12 invited, 12 expected. I know that number because I'd built the invite list myself 2 days earlier and checked it twice, the way you do when a client's name is attached and you don't want to be the one who forgot someone. We started at 2. By 2:05, the gallery view on my screen showed 13 tiles. Nobody said anything at first, because that's what happens in a big call. Everyone assumes someone else clocked it, someone else will ask. I scanned the names quickly. 11 coworkers I recognized, 1 client rep we'd met once before, and then, bottom row, far right, a 13th tile with no label under it at all. Not guessed. Not a phone number the way dial-ins usually show up. Just blank, black, no video, no audio bar moving. I unmuted and asked if everyone could see an extra participant. A few people said yes. Our project lead, Renee, pulled up the participant panel to check, and she said something that stuck with me since. The panel only listed 12 names. The tile existed in the gallery view.
It did not exist in the list of who was on the call.
IT support was looped in fast, because a call with a client on it and an unidentified feed is the kind of thing that gets escalated in under 2 minutes at a company like ours. While we waited, we kept working, because that's also what happens. People default to normalcy even when something is clearly wrong, especially with a client watching. Someone made a joke about ghosts in the software. Nobody laughed the way you laugh at a joke that's actually funny. About 10 minutes in, the black tile changed. It didn't announce itself. No sound, no notification. It just wasn't black anymore. There was a picture on it now, dim, grainy, like a camera in a room with one weak light source. And the room in the frame was recognizable, because I had been on calls with Devin enough times to know his apartment, the exposed brick behind his desk, the tall window with the city skyline behind it that he was faintly proud of and mentioned constantly. Devin was on our call too, his own camera on, in the second row of tiles, talking through a slide about audience segmentation, completely normal, completely unaware.
And on the the 13th tile, in that same apartment, 40 floors up, behind his chair, there was someone standing.
I want to be precise about what I saw, because I've second-guessed the details more times than I can count since. It was tall, taller than the doorway behind it, which didn't make sense and which I chose not to think about too hard in the moment. It wasn't moving. It was just standing, a few feet behind Devin's chair, angled slightly toward him, the way you'd stand if you were reading over someone's shoulder. Renee saw it at the same time I did. She didn't say anything out loud on the main call. She started a side message instead, a thread with me and two others, and it just said, "Is that Devin's apartment?"
I typed back, "Yes."
She typed, "Is he alone right now?" He was. He told us at the top of the call, actually, some offhand comment about finally having the place to himself for the afternoon, no roommate, no noise, good for concentrating on the pitch. He lived in a locked, key-fobbed high-rise, the kind of building with a doorman downstairs and a badge system for the elevator, the kind of place you pick specifically because nobody gets in who isn't supposed to. We didn't say anything to him. I still think about why, and I think the honest answer is that none of us knew what we'd be saying. "Hey Devin, there's an unlabeled security camera feed on our call showing something standing behind you isn't a sentence anyone gets out smoothly in front of a client, and some deep, stupid, professional instinct kept all four of us in that side thread quiet on the main call instead, typing frantically to each other while Devin kept presenting slides 15 feet from a shape none of us could explain. IT got back to us 9 minutes later. They said they couldn't find a 13th device on the call logs. 12 connections, 12 IPs, matching the 12 names in the participant panel.
Whatever we were looking at in the gallery view wasn't registering on their end at all, which should have been reassuring and instead was the single worst thing anyone said to me that whole week.
The figure moved once, about 6 minutes after we first saw it. Not toward Devin.
It tilted its head, slowly, the way you tilt your head at something you were mildly curious about, and for one full second it looked like it was facing directly into the camera on that unlabeled tile. Facing us.
Not Devin.
Us.
That's when the tile went black again, no fade, no disconnect sound, just gone, back to the same blank rectangle it had started as. The participant count in the gallery dropped to 12. It stayed 12 for the rest of the call. We finished the meeting. I don't know how, honestly, looking back, we finished an hour-long client pitch after that, but we did, on autopilot, everyone's voice a half-step flatter than usual, everyone avoiding eye contact through their own cameras. Devin never knew. He signed off cheerfully, said something about grabbing a late lunch now that he had the apartment to himself a little longer, and that offhand comment sat in my stomach like a stone for the rest of the day. Renee called an actual meeting about it afterward, just the four of us from the side thread. We compared notes, and that's when the timeline really started to bother me, because Priya, one of the four, mentioned she'd seen something similar on a call 3 weeks earlier that she'd never told anyone about. An extra tile for about 90 seconds during a status update, gone before she could say anything, and she'd talked herself out of it being real because nobody else on that call had mentioned it either. Once she said that, I started thinking back through every call I'd sat through in the last 2 months. And there was one, a Monday stand-up in early spring, where my own screen had briefly shown 13 participants for what I remembered, at the time, as a rendering glitch. I hadn't screenshotted it. I hadn't said anything. I just refreshed the app and the count went back to 12 and I moved on with my day the way you move on from 100 tiny unexplained software hiccups a year. We went back through recordings where we had them. 3 other calls, going back nearly 2 months, had brief unexplained participant spikes buried in the metadata, 30 seconds here, 90 seconds there, never logged by IT, never matching any device on record. And every single one we could verify, the extra tile had been active during a stretch when at least one person on the call was alone, at home, on camera, unaware. We reported it up the chain. IT ran a full security audit, checked every laptop, every webcam driver, every account for signs of remote access software, and came back clean, no backdoors, no malware. Nothing that should have let anyone or anything ride in on our calls uninvited. That should have been the end of it, the kind of resolution that lets you file the whole thing under corporate ghost story and stop thinking about it at 2 in the morning. Except Devin still works with us. He's still on video calls 3 or 4 times a week, camera up, professional, unbothered, because we never told him. I've sat through a dozen calls since where I catch myself watching the gallery view a little too closely, counting tiles before I let myself relax into the meeting, and I've started doing something I never used to do, which is glance at the corner of my own screen during long calls, checking the participant count against the number of names I actually recognize. It's been 12 every time since. I keep counting anyway.
And some nights, working late on a call that's run past when anyone reasonable should still be in a meeting, I think about how the figure tilted its head toward the camera that one time, toward us, not Devin, like it had noticed it was being watched and wanted us to know it had noticed back.
My coworker's face liquefied on a video call in front of 9 people, live, on screen, and the audio underneath it kept chanting in a language a forensics lab later dated to roughly 1,000 years before English existed. That was the easy part to explain away.
The part one can't explain is that the thing on the call still talks to me sometimes, through my laptop speakers, even when I'm certain the volume is off.
I'll go back to the beginning, because it started as the single most ordinary meeting on our calendar, a quarterly review, the kind everyone half listens to while checking email in another tab. I was a remote engineer at a logistics software company, 9 of us on the call that afternoon, cameras on because our director liked it that way, a habit left over from a manager who used to say faces build trust. We were about 20 minutes in, numbers on a shared screen, somebody droning through churn metrics, when the audio glitched. Not a normal glitch. It didn't cut out or stutter the way a bad connection does. It layered, like a second track had been mixed underneath the first one at low volume, a rhythmic sound, evenly spaced, almost musical if you didn't listen too closely. A few people asked if someone had music playing in the background. Our director asked everyone to check their mics. Nobody found a source. The sound kept going anyway, threaded under whoever was talking, patient, unbothered by the fact that we couldn't find it. I want to be honest that at the time it read as strange, not frightening. IT things go wrong on calls constantly, and a weird audio artifact is the kind of story you tell at a happy hour, not the kind you take seriously while it's happening. We kept the meeting going. The chanting, because that's what it was, though none of us used that word yet, kept pace under the conversation for the next 15 minutes, rising very slightly whenever the call went quiet and receding whenever someone spoke, like it was listening for gaps. Then it started rising even when people were talking.
Priya, our data lead, was mid-sentence about fourth quarter targets when her voice started to get pulled under the chant instead of over it, and that's the first moment I remember actual fear instead of mild irritation, because audio doesn't work that way. A human voice doesn't lose a fight with background noise on a modern call unless something is actively doing the mixing.
Our director tried to end the meeting early. The leave button worked for some people and not for others. 3 of us got kicked out cleanly within seconds, and the rest, myself included, stayed locked on the call with a spinning icon that never resolved into either you left or reconnecting, just spinning, while the meeting kept running without us being able to do anything but watch.
That's when Marcus's face started to change.
I've told this part of the story exactly twice out loud since it happened, once to a company investigator and once to my sister, and both times I ran out of the right words about a third of the way through. It wasn't like a filter or a glitch effect.
His features moved the way wax moves near heat, sliding rather than breaking, his mouth stretching a half-second longer than his jaw should have let it, his eyes sliding down toward where his cheekbones used to sit while the rest of him kept perfectly, horribly still, like a man patiently waiting out a bad connection he hadn't noticed yet. He was still talking.
Or something using his mouth was still talking, and that same chant, now loud enough that it was unmistakably not background noise anymore, unmistakably not music, syllables with weight to them, repeating in a pattern that felt less like language and more like counting. 2 people on the call started screaming. I remember that clearly because I didn't, and I've never been proud of that. I just sat there frozen with my hand on my mouse, unable to click anything, watching a face come apart in a grid of 9 tiles like it was one more slide in a normal Tuesday deck. The call ended itself. Not a leave button, not a host disconnect, it simply closed, every tile gone at once, replaced by the flat gray screen of the app's home view like nothing had happened at all. I sat in my apartment for what felt like a long time not moving. Then I did the thing I've thought about every day since, which was mute myself on principle before I'd even reopened the app, an old habit, the kind of reflex you build after years of remote calls where you learn to protect the room around you before anything else. I muted my mic. I did not touch the volume on my speakers.
And something spoke to me anyway.
Not through the call, because the call was closed, the app fully quit, no window open on my screen at all. It came through my laptop speakers directly, low, close, in English this time, which somehow made it worse than the chanting had been, because English meant it was choosing to be understood by me specifically.
It said my name.
It told me to check my email in the morning. It said it the way you'd say something to a coworker in passing, mild, unhurried, entirely uninterested in whether I was afraid. I unplugged the laptop. I put it in another room. The voice didn't come back that night, or if it did, I wasn't close enough to hear it, which I have chosen, deliberately, to consider a small mercy. Marcus didn't come back to work. HR's official language, when anyone asked, was medical leave, indefinite, no further comment, the kind of phrasing that answers nothing and closes every follow-up question at the same time. I heard through a friend on his team that his apartment was found undisturbed, laptop still open on his desk, call software still running, no sign of him at all. I don't know if that's true. I've never been able to verify it, and some part of me has stopped trying, because every path I follow trying to verify it leads somewhere I don't want to actually confirm. The company brought in an outside firm to review the recording, the parts of it that existed, since most platforms only cache short local buffers and the rest lived on servers nobody with my clearance could access. What came back, weeks later, filtered down to us secondhand through a director who looked like she hadn't slept, was that the audio layered under the meeting matched, as closely as linguists could place it, patterns from a language reconstruction dated roughly 1,000 years old, older than any live speaker, the kind of thing normally heard only in academic recreations built from fragments and educated guessing, not spoken live and rhythmic under a corporate quarterly review by 9 remote employees on a Tuesday afternoon. I went looking, after that, for anything similar that had happened before, because by then I badly wanted this to be a known thing, a documented thing, anything other than singular and aimed at us. I found one account, buried in an old forum thread from years earlier, a developer, remote like me, describing almost exactly what we'd experienced, chanting under a call, a face coming apart on screen, a voice afterward that used his name and told him to check something the next morning. His last post, dated the following day, said only that he checked, that he understood now, and that he was sorry. Nobody heard from him again after that.
A few replies down the thread, someone claiming to be a family member said he was found at his desk, laptop open, recording software still running. The file corrupted beyond recovery except for the final several seconds, which they said, and I have never been able to confirm this either, showed him calmly narrating what was happening to him in real time, the way you'd narrate a process you'd finally been given the instructions for.
I still work remote. I still take calls, because bills don't stop coming due just because you've decided video conferencing might be a door left open onto something old and patient on the other side. I keep my speaker volume physically low now, a habit nobody else on my team understands or asks about, and every morning, before I open my email, I sit for a second with my hand hovering over the trackpad. Because some tired, stubborn, unproven part of me still believes that not checking is a kind of protection. It spoke to me once more, about 3 weeks after Marcus disappeared, late at night, laptop closed, volume all the way down, the little indicator light showing 0. It didn't say my name that time.
It just said, softly, almost kindly, that it was patient, and that Tuesday would come again whether I was ready or not.
I don't take Tuesday calls anymore if I can help it. When I can't help it, I keep a hand near the power button the entire time, and I have never once told anyone on those calls why.